So today we've got Amanda Morgan from the Healthy Lifestyle. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So Amanda is 5 months postpartum.
Yes.
Yeah. One daughter. She's actually a TPC alumni, which we're very excited about. And we can't wait to hear her story. So we thought we'd start with, are you okay to talk about your pregnancy?
Of course.
Yeah, let's start. So let's start. Obviously, we know how it happened. Actually, but maybe we don't. Maybe we don't, because everyone's story is different.
She was actually a surprise.
Really?
I am one of those lucky ones nowadays where my husband and I started the discussion around wanting to have a baby. So I can't really say pulled the goalie because I haven't been on birth control for 7 years now. But we kind of just went about things like if it happens, it happens. And the first time that we did that, I got pregnant. So, actually on Valentine's Day. I don't know if that's TMI, but yep. Our first doctor's appointment, he was like, "Oh, you're a Valentine's Day baby." So, yeah, she was a surprise, and it was, a great way for that to happen because it took a lot of stress off of me because I, didn't have a choice. It happened and it was great. And I feel fortunate that that was our circumstance.
And what was your pregnancy like? Was it easy, tough? Did you have any complications?
No, medical ones that were serious. I would just say I had, I would say it was easy in some ways and difficult in others. I definitely had issues with sleep, as I'm sure everybody does. But first trimester, same thing, like not feeling great, but nothing that was too out there or crazy. I kind of went about things my own way. I didn't do certain tests with the doctors.
Really?
And I walked into the doctor's office the first visit that we had, and I said, "I'm probably going to do this my way, and I want to make sure you guys are cool with it. And as long as you are, I'm happy to be here," because it was my regular GYN's office. So that was my biggest concern was I knew that, and being who I am, I was just like, okay, I'm going to be really open and honest about things that I'm experiencing, and there's going to be things I want to do, things I don't want to do, and as long as you're cool with that, then this is going to be great.
And did you like being pregnant? I always feel a bit bad asking that question. I
Because
really
you don't want
someone
people
to say,
yeah.
no, I want someone to go, no, I hated it, because I really did enjoy it. Did you enjoy being pregnant?
I wish I could say I did, but I will be that person that's
Brilliant,
going to be really
Amanda,
honest.
do it.
I didn't love it. I loved the concept, let's say. I
Yeah.
loved the fact that my body was creating this life, and it felt so empowering, and, up until the birth, I mean, everything was just so great. But as far as the impact that it had on my body, I can't say that I love that part. My daughter sat really low pretty much my entire pregnancy, so I had certain things happen, down there that were rather uncomfortable that also happened throughout my labor and after as well. So I loved the concept. I loved what my body was doing. The certain aspects I can't say that I loved, but especially at the end when my husband, I'll never forget one night I was trying to turn over to sleep, and it was this whole process of, okay, turning from this side, going on the back, turning to the other side, and you look like Humpty Dumpty. And he looked at me and was like, "So that's what you've been going through the whole time?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is what it's really been like."
And what about your labour? Where were you first of all?
I was at Stanford Hospital.
You were at Stanford,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And so, Jessica and I know a little bit about the story, but tell everyone who's listening and watching what you went through.
So, I'll start by saying that I was interested in having a natural childbirth. I wasn't married to a plan, but I did create a birth plan just because I'm very type A and needed to write everything down and, have it on a printed piece of paper. And I also did a Hypnobabies course ahead of time. So, I felt pretty prepared. Of course, I was with you guys for your course. So there were a lot of different areas that I was pulling information from. So when the time came, I mentally felt ready. but then I shortly realized that you're never really ready. I was 11 days late. This was part of my plan also. I didn't want to have to go by traditional medical standards, them telling me that I wasn't going to be able to have the baby my own way if I was late. There was a doctor, my daughter was also born the night before Thanksgiving, which, I played this whole game that week, like, is she going to come on her own? Do I want to do anything to help her come so that we're home for Thanksgiving? It was a very interesting week, to say the least. But I decided I wanted to, go to 42 weeks as long as I was healthy, and the doctor said it was okay. So they decided it was fine. So they were going to let me go to 42 weeks, which is rare, but that's why I wanted a doctor that I could have open discussions with. So it was 11 days later, and I had two, membrane sweeps, which, may work, may not. I had tried everything under the sun to try to get her to come out. You name it, I tried it. Having sex, which is definitely not comfortable at that point. Inserting evening primrose oil. Yep, I did that too. Drinking all the teas, everything that you can imagine that I'm sure maybe you're reading about or have read about if you're watching this video. I did, and she was not budging. So I did the membrane sweep. It's not the most pleasant experience, but for me it actually worked, because the first one I did, I don't know if this is like TMI, but my mucus plug came out. And then the second one I did, she was born 2 days after that. So that did the trick. The actual labor, my water broke at 5 a.m. And this was like another point of conversation with my doctor. I wanted to not have to come into the hospital right away if my water broke, because I personally didn't want to be induced. I just wanted to see if my daughter would come on her own. So she said I could wait as long as 6 hours. And I broke the rule and waited a little bit longer than that. So my water broke at 5 a.m. I didn't call until about 3:30. So that's 10 and a half hours. Is my math right? Yeah, 10 and a half hours. And I waited a little too long, because by the time we were going to the hospital, I was in active labor, and that car ride to the hospital is one that I will never forget. My husband had to pull over twice. But we got to the hospital. I was 8 centimeters dilated when we got there. Definitely one of those stories. And then I actually decided in that moment, even though I felt prepared to have a natural childbirth, that I did want the drugs. And the nurses were asking me, do you have a birth plan? And I said, fuck the birth plan, give me the drugs, because I was in so much pain. So they went to go get the anesthesiologist, do everything, and by the time they got back to me, I was 9.5 centimeters dilated. And if anyone who's had a natural childbirth can relate, I was already making grunting sounds, meaning that I was pushing without realizing that I was pushing. So pretty much I had a team of 10 people around me debating what to do about the epidural, and I couldn't believe they were even questioning it at this point, because they shouldn't, but they said no. So I ended up having a natural childbirth. My husband and I call my birth, my labor, and the whole experience the plan that went to, according to plan, unexpectedly. So that's how we refer to my labor experience. So my water broke at 5. I went to the hospital at 6:30, and my daughter was born at 9:55 p.m. that night. I did end up pushing for 2 hours, and it was definitely a very raw and real and amazing experience, and just holding her afterward is something I'll never forget, even though your head's kind of like in the clouds at that point. But yeah, it was surreal, to say the least.
Oh, Amanda, that's such an amazing story. I think there's so many people out there that, like you, had an idea in their head of what they wanted. And I think it's so important for mums to know that sometimes it goes that way and sometimes it doesn't. And as long as the healthy baby comes out at the end, that's what we're all looking for, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. That was such a great story, and thank you for joining us. Amanda, I wanted wanted to ask you, you mentioned in your birth story that you decided not to go the traditional route of tests, and I didn't want to interrupt your flow, but I really want to know why. Why did you decide not to kind of go the traditional route?
I had done a fair amount of research, and there were things I felt comfortable with and things that I, felt I wasn't or weren't really necessary. I felt that, just based on who I was, and I'm a nutritionist. I don't know if we said that part, but I do that for a living. So when it came to gestational diabetes and that test, I automatically decided I didn't want to do it. And that was, again, a choice for me personally, because I felt healthy. That was the first reason, and I didn't feel that, I thought my baby was fine. We had discussed it between my doctor and I, but also I had passed out once in my pregnancy, and drinking, a big thing of sugar naturally for my own body was probably going to make me do that again. So I had a conversation with them, and that's just an example of one of the things I decided not to do ahead of time, just based on my own lifestyle choices that I felt we were okay with, me and baby and doctor. So that was one example. But yeah, I think every person's different, every baby's different, every doctor's different, and you kind of have to just go with your gut. And that was one thing my gut was like, nope, don't do that one.
So no regrets that you didn't make
no regrets whatsoever.
Really, that's amazing.
No, not one.
I think it's so important for mums to know that they can make those choices, but it's also really important to know that you sound like you had such a wonderful doctor. You need to talk about it with your provider.
Yeah.
And make sure that they think it's okay as well as you making those choices.
Right. I think that, pregnancy is such an unknown area of life for most women, and we get so wrapped up in everything that doctors say is law. And I think that most doctors know more than we will ever know, but that doesn't mean that you can't question your choices or what you think you have to do. And if you do everything by the book, then that's awesome. But if you decide to forego things, then that's great too. I think everyone's experience is completely different, and that's what makes all of this great. We can learn from each other.
What could you not do without when you were pregnant? What were the three things we're looking for?
Definitely my pregnancy pillow. And if you don't have one, like Jessica said, you make a fort with pillows. I feel like no matter what way you turn, there needs to be something to lay your belly on. I had the Snuggle pillow, which was great. So that would definitely be one. A book I read, which was called Expecting Better by Emily Oster. She and I love reading all these books that debunk myths around pregnancy, because they teach you to question certain things. Like, I'll give a fun example, like drinking wine, whether that's okay or not. And, certain tests, she kind of runs through everything for you so that, and it's all research based, which I love. It's not just her stating, she's got facts behind it, which is awesome. So that made me feel a lot more comfortable with certain things that I decided to do during my pregnancy that maybe were suggested not to do conventionally. Naps is a great one. And then a cliche answer, because it was summertime towards the end of my pregnancy, is ice cream. I really wanted something cold and really fatty and delicious almost every night. And, I think it's important to eat healthy during pregnancy, but I also think it's important to listen to your body and give in to those cravings, and finding that healthy balance is key.
Yay! And you're such an amazing nutritionist.
Oh, thank
Jessica
you.
and I love the things that you post about, because not only do they look healthy, but they actually look edible and delicious.
Right.
Rather than dry and loveless.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.